All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here in Wedmore HQ with my special guest today, Mr. Paul Fishman.
Hey.
Hey, man.
How's it going?
Thanks for finding the right office.
You know what? It was a journey. I made it. I worked through the self-sabotage moment where I was just going to try and leave.
I knew it. Anyways, for those of you who don't know, well, you do know that we moved to a new office, but we didn't give Paul the right address. Wow, I dropped the ball there.
I was trying to be very resourceful and go back on Instagram and try and figure it out.
Yeah,
and,
but no one can figure it out. No one knows.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Except now I do.
Except you. Yeah. That's what your next post on Instagram is going to be
Yep.
about. Is our address. So I'm really excited to chat with you. So first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be here
Absolutely.
in the office.
Thank you.
With us in person. It's so much better that way.
I mean, I only record in person.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
So because you do your podcast in the car.
Yeah.
So you'll bring guests in the car with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why don't we start right at the beginning? Tell us a little bit about what do you do? Who do you help? How do you help them?
Yeah.
What is your podcast about? All that good stuff.
Amazing. So my name is Paul Fishman. You already knew that. I'm just starting with the easy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My mission in life is to empower and inspire humanity to love unconditionally. And I do this within my self-love coaching. So really what I want to share with the world is that any transformation needs to start with self-love and acceptance. And it's really, really important for me to live an authentic life in that sense and always tell stories. And I help people who are at the breaking point of really hit with this, I know that there's more. I'm feeling really stuck right now. Almost living this Groundhog's Day moment where the universe keeps on trying to teach them the same lesson, but they're not learning it. It's there are so many different examples that we can talk about, and it's really at the baseline. I just want to help everyone know that with that unconditional love and acceptance, not only of yourself, but of everyone around you, you can have whatever you want. Mm-hmm. It's really, really important.
It's funny too, because I think the interesting almost paradox with all of this is it's the struggles that people have. And I think this is the argument you're going to make today, is so much of it can be attributed and traced back to the lack of self-love that we have, which leads into stories of not worthy, not deserving. So if you truly believe that you're not worthy or deserving of something, how are you ever going to get that thing, right?
I mean,
but then at the reverse end of it is I think it's very easy for even some people, my listeners are different. Your listeners are different. But for most people, someone here is probably going to go share this with their friend or their spouse or business partner. And it's so easy for most people to just discredit topics like this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing that is actually so much at the source of so much of struggle and suffering. Yet when it's presented to us, it tends to be this yeah, I know about all that stuff. Or I'll deal with that later. I'll love myself once I have this thing. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you experience a lot? Is it that you almost have to have a megaphone in their ear, no, this is important.
It's very important. It's funny that you asked that question. I actually yesterday welcomed someone new into my group coaching program. And she was like, you know what, Paul? I didn't know that I had a self-love problem until a week ago. She's like, but it's been a problem for 15 years.
Yeah.
And it was all because her business partner was like, hey, you got to figure this out. You got to you're starting to resent people in the office. You're not speaking your truth. I can see it in you. You're holding back. What's going on? And when she first heard about me, she was like, oh, that's silly.
Right.
She told me, she was like, that's silly. That's woo-woo. Oh, I know about manifestation. I know about journaling, but I don't, and so.
Yeah, it's I get a massage. I love myself, right?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about massage is that's self-care, right? And self-care and self-love are two different things, but they cannot operate without each other. So for instance, you could go get a massage and say you self-love yourself, but at the end of the day, if you're not mentally in the headspace of being I'm so grateful for my body, I'm giving myself permission to just relax and take this time, and you're focusing maybe on just what you could be doing if you weren't treating yourself to a massage, it's defeating the entire purpose.
Right. Totally. Oh my gosh, yeah. But it's kind of this funny thing of people, you see this a lot, but they're like, well, yeah, I'll get to this self-love stuff once I get my business up.
Mm-hmm.
Once I get my business at a certain level, or once I'm making a certain amount of money,
Mm-hmm.
then I can deal with that, or then I will love myself. And it's like, no, maybe perhaps you haven't gotten your business to the level you want because you're not loving yourself, because that's not there in your life. I just love this message. I self-love and love the message,
Mm-hmm.
but I really do, because I think it's important. I think it's relevant, extremely relevant. I would love to know, what is your origin story in all this? Why this? Where did this come from for you?
Well, I have been through a major self-love journey. It's coming up on 10 years of me consciously and unconsciously loving myself. For the first 25 years of my life, I lived in fear. I was the epitome of a people pleaser. So I was living my life as a person that I thought everyone else expected me to be.
Can you give like one specific example of like what that really looked like for you, so we can?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gay, and I dated women till I was 25, and probably knew I was gay when I was 5. You know, so it's just like, because my parents were like, hey, we really want grandchildren, and my friends like started to make fun of me, and like, well, they're not my friends clearly because they're making fun of me, but like people like peers and making fun of me. So I was just like, oh, I have to fix this about me. It's not right. And what's happened because of that is my subconscious mind was attracting these women who were not available for me, emotionally abusive, like just treated me like shit. And it never made me feel good inside. And then I developed an emotional binge eating issue. So I gained 75 pounds. I started shopping, I was addicted to shopping, because every time I would emotionally eat, I would feel horrible. So I need the high of going to shop. So I was in like the cycle of emotionally eating, gaining weight, shopping, not being able to fit in the clothes, so having to go around, all because I wasn't being my true authentic self. And so it all came to like this major catalyst when I'm in this 3-year relationship with this woman, and I can't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking in the mirror and I'm just like, this is not you. You're unhappy. You know, you've never been heavier. Like, there's a picture of my Instagram of the way I used to look, and I just don't even recognize that person. And I left that relationship, and within 2 weeks, 20 pounds had fallen off of me. It was emotional weight that my body was holding on to. Yeah. So this is just like a real tangible way that you can measure that loving yourself does more than just like being able to hashtag it on an Instagram photo.
Oh, man. So that was like a catalytic moment for you. But did you attribute it to like self-love and acceptance? Like, where did that really go? Oh, I just haven't been like,
myself. That's a great question. It's really interesting because with all of my clients that I work with, we don't know, like, you're not going to know immediately when it happens. Like, it took me almost 8 years to realize that, oh, that was me choosing me and saying yes to what I needed. Right. You know, like, I wasn't just like, I'm going to say yes to me and everything's going to work out. Like, in this like society, we're conditioned to think that saying yes to ourselves is selfish. So I didn't know that that's what I was doing until this business started launching. And I started like, so the next part of my story is that I got into fitness. Immediately after I exited that relationship, I became like a devout spin just enthusiast. I did like 7 days a week of spin. I was just in it. I love the community, the music, the being alone in a dark room with yourself, but surrounded by other people doing the same exact thing. And I lost all of the weight. And then I was so terrified to gain the weight back that I was like, I have to become a spin instructor. It's my safe space.
Wow.
I have to become one. So I became a spin instructor. And then 4 years later, I'm a personal trainer, nutrition coach, spin instructor, and I'm still battling this like internal concept of who I really am, you know? And at the end of the day, here I am helping all of these people with issues like, I just want him to love me, so I need a flat stomach, or I just want to get a promotion, so I need to be able to fit into a suit that doesn't have to be custom made. And it's all of these things that we need to change about ourselves so external sources will validate us. Right. And I was like, oh, it was this Oprah aha moment. I was like, aha, that's the missing piece. All these people come to me, they think that by losing weight or like fitting in the right size clothes that society's telling them they need to fit into, they're going to immediately have all the things that they want. But at the end of the day, they didn't even know what they truly wanted. And it was really just a validation from themselves. You got to find it from within first.
100%.
So, yeah.
And I'm sure your experience, like most personal trainers I've spoken to, is you end up being like their therapist anyways during all the sessions.
Yeah, I would have I go over to these women's houses and they'd be like, okay, so let's just stretch today and talk. I helped a woman through her divorce and like finding her new partner. And I enjoyed that so much. And I was like, okay, I'm not like the biggest fan of working out with these people. So I'll just be their, coach.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome. And I know we have some mutual connections of people that you've worked with and been able to do amazing things with. So it's awesome to have you here. I'm going to give you what will probably be like a really easy, simple question for you. But I feel like at the same time when we bring up this topic, it is something that just seems like intellectually intangible and conceptual. And I think as listeners have heard me say, there is such a difference between like knowing something and living it. And this is a great example of that. But what is self-love, and how do we know when we are loving ourselves?
Thank you for asking that beautiful question. So when we're looking at the word self-love, if we break down the definition of self, it's the individual, it's individuality, and love is devotion. So self-love is just devotion to our individuality. But here's where we run into an issue. And this is the real intense work that I do with all of my clients. Who are you as an individual? Because at the end, I can say so many things about who I thought I was as an individual, who others think of me, like James, you're the world's best boss, right? Because that's what it says on your mug. But like, is that really how you truly feel about yourself, Or are we just like posting on Instagram because we're X, Y, and Z and we're getting all these likes and followers, and so we're defining ourselves by what other people think of us.
Yeah. And that's very dangerous too, because number one, those are external things that you really don't have any control of. Number two, all that can go away in a second, right? There's a big joke about when Instagram went down for a day. It's like those poor Instagram models.
Oh my goodness. And there was a day that a podcast I was on went live, and I don't think anyone even listened to it.
That's the worst.
It's the worst.
That's the worst. So that really is like the age-old question is like, who are you?
Yeah. So it's just really, really important. And it's really, you can't measure that stuff. And within my program, so my program is called the Self-Love Diet. And I call it that because for the first 4 weeks, it's a 12-week program, we're talking all about self. So I'm helping you learn how to be an individual. And then around week 4 and 5, people have like a massive panic attack. It's expected. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. I realized that I hate my job, or oh my gosh, I've been in this like lackluster relationship for all this time and I've been sacrificing myself for the other person, or oh, my parents have been coming down on me hard to have kids and I don't want kids, and they're just like, I was defining myself around all these things that have nothing to do with me as an individual. So then we step into the devotion part, the love. Like, how can I teach you how to love yourself as you truly are? And that's when the magic starts to happen, but also when the really, really hard work, because we've been conditioning ourselves for me, it was 25 years. For other clients, it's been 50, 60 years of like being this person that's not really them.
And that has to be so scary, because it's like you're breaking down someone's entire construct of reality that they've clung onto for their whole life. So it would be natural that a lot of resistance and they probably hate you and curse you.
Yeah. And well, the funny thing is like I have like, because I've been doing this for a while, I have these expectations and I know what's coming. And like around week 6, people are like, okay, well, it's Paul's fault. I'm going to blame Paul. I'm done. And so I get to call them out.
I love myself, but I hate Paul.
I hate Paul. And then, we work in, and then after that, the diet portion, which actually has nothing to do with food. It's all about habitual nourishment, which is the baseline definition of diet. So I'm teaching you over 12 weeks how to habitually nourish the devotion to your individuality. Yeah. And that's through like journaling. And that's why I love the group aspect, because my message is that you are worth it, you deserve it, and you are not alone.
Give it to me.
You're not alone.
I love that. So This is a weird question, and I'm just curious about this, but like, do people contextualize self-love? Like, do they have it in certain areas but not in others? Or is this a holistic thing where it's like, how you do business is how you're going to do relationships? Or what has your experience been working with clients? It's like, wow, you're really good when it comes to this, but over here, not so much.
Yeah, that's the latter is normally how it happens. I think that people compartmentalize self-love.
Right, yeah.
And, especially as we're really transitioning into this new age of how to do business, right? Like my dad comes from the time where if you're not working every single day,
gosh.
and I get like
our dads would be best friends.
Yeah. And here I am like waking up and I've built a great team around me. Yeah. What am I doing today? Oh, I have a meeting with James. Okay, great. And I do more than that. Don't worry.
Sure you do.
Yeah. 4-hour work week. Try 2-hour work week, Tim.
2 hour. Why not 1 hour?
Okay, yeah, 30 minutes, but that's my lowest I could go. So they compartmentalize it, and really, what I've been working on with a lot of my clients is like, why do you feel that you are worth having success in your business, but you're not worth having success within your body? Or why do you feel like you're worth having success in family, but business, you're not worth it? Like, what's the disconnect? Mm-hmm. And the reality is it all comes back to childhood. It all comes back to these stories that we continue to telling ourselves. Mm-hmm. All comes back that it's easier for our mind to suffer through the stories and the anxiety and the comparison that we do than to actually do the work. So I just have this great story of a business owner that I worked with, mm-hmm. and he was a voice coach. So he was having trouble getting more clients through the door, and he invested every last cent that he had to work with me, and we even had him on a payment plan. Like, the last thing that I want is for money to stand in the way of people doing this work. And he comes in and he's just like, okay, Paul, I just lost 9 clients. I have 4 clients. And I was like, well, what do you want in your business? And he was like, well, I want 30 clients. And I was like, what's our timeline? He was like, by the end of the program. I was like, so we have 90 days to get you 30 clients. How are we going to do that? And he was like, well, I don't know. I have no idea. I was like, this is it. You're going to write down in your journal, and this is a hot tip. We're doing present tense journaling. You are writing down exactly where you see your business as if it's already a thing, because our mind is going to start believing that, because our mind is like, it's an old thing, and it has reptilian brain. So here we are, we're always living in this fight or flight. And it's like when you're watching like a scary movie and you think that you're in it, it's because our brain can't tell the difference. Mm-hmm. So instead of living in a scary, anxiety-driven movie, let's live in the best rom-com ever, where everyone's successful. So once he started doing that, within 14 days, he had 7 new clients.
I love it.
Yeah, so we can just end the episode now.
Yeah, just do that.
Yeah.
Every day, was it like every day?
It was every day.
And it's present tense.
It's present.
So what does that look like?
Yeah, so like I am so grateful, like celebrating that. I'm so grateful that I have 30 clients in my practice that he also had goals to save money, and he also had all these other things. So you can stack on, like, I would say the max is like 2 to 3 things in it, because if you start putting too much in there, like, I'm so grateful that I have 30 clients and I live in $1 million home and I have my dream car, it's just like your brain's gonna be like, okay, too much. Right. So every day, and then if you really, really want to get extra, this is where the powerful stuff is. You take your journal and you look in the mirror and you read it to yourself, looking at yourself.
Wow.
Because the mirror work is what happens. And actually, if you go to my Instagram at Paul Fishman, or my website, paulfishman.love, you can sign up.
You have a .love?
I have a .love. .com was taken, so I had to get the next best thing, which I think is a better thing now. Yeah. And you can get a free mirror mantra that you hang up on your mirror, and you start your day off reading it. And it's very simple, and I designed it beautifully for you, so it'll work in the aesthetic of your apartment, I'm sure, or home, or wherever it is. And I want to share it right now. It is, I give myself permission to be okay with where I am. I honor the journey and know that I am doing my best. I love and accept you. I love and accept you. I love and accept you. So you're saying these words and you're looking at yourself in the mirror, and if you do this the first time without breaking eye contact, please send me a direct message on Instagram and let me know, because I want to celebrate you, because I've had people cry. I've had people start laughing. I've had people do everything but being able to say those words, because have you ever like actually looked at yourself in the mirror?
Yeah.
You know, that's a great question to ask yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I do these weird moments where I'll look at my hands. I'm like, whoa, I'm like alive right now.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that not on drugs. Right?
Imagine him on drugs.
Right? That's another episode. No, but you know, it is like when you can have those profound moments of presence and like see yourself and like, but a lot about acceptance too, for just where you are. And that's, it's beautiful, man. I freaking love that. So let's say like, speaking to like entrepreneurs and business owners specifically, how does us not having that devotion to ourselves, what are the symptoms of that? In other words, where is that showing up and manifesting as the struggles and the lack that we have as an entrepreneur? Like, is not having those clients and having those clients leave, would you say like that's a direct symptom of not loving yourself? Right.
Well, the other part of the story is that my client was grossly undercharging for his services. So
we didn't even need all those clients.
Right. He didn't need all those clients, but at the same time, so I was like, okay, so your next step is we're going to charge more. Yeah. And he starts charging more. And this is a big thing that a lot of people are scared of, is like raising prices. Right.
And you would say that this is, because this is a very common one, that this is an example of us not having self-love. Yeah.
Because self-love is self-worth. So if I'm sitting here and I'm saying, okay, you know, you can come join my program. It's $30 for 3 months. Not only does that make me feel really crummy, I'm just like, oh, I'm only worth $30, but then the other person isn't going to get the value out of it all.
Totally.
So,
yeah. But and then it gets worse, because then you're still doing the work and it's not enough. So you need more. So you're spread more thin, and then they keep asking for more help. And one of the worst things comes in is you start resenting them.
Yep. And when they're only paying $30, they're not doing the work.
No.
And that's that. I've run into that even at a higher price point. There comes a time when, if money isn't an object, we have to figure something else out. And that's like when we just got to get really, really, really specialized and customized when it comes to getting people to actually commit. But when it comes to raising prices, my client, he raised his prices, and the people who were paying his old price were like, oh yeah, you know, that makes sense. Like, you're totally worth that. And he was scared that everyone was going to leave, and no one left.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
what are some other things that you see that, for entrepreneurs, like what the symptoms of not having that self-love, like how does it show up?
Creating content out of scarcity.
Ooh, what does that look like?
That looks like something that I did. I started just off as group, and then it skyrocketed at the beginning, which I think was just a sign from the universe that I'm doing the right thing. And then, of course, like 2 months into it, the universe was like, okay, now you got to work. And I was like, what? I have to work? I have to like try and get people who don't know me to sign up. And I was like, I just didn't want to do the work. So I was like, I'm going to, you know, create a subscription model. Right. And I launched it, and like almost overnight, and it didn't really feel right for me in that iteration. I was just like, why am I doing this? But of course I was doing it because I didn't know how I was going to pay rent in January, and my husband's freaking out, and I'm just like, okay, I got to figure out something. And I was like, oh, this is going to be huge. And then like 5 people signed up. And instead of celebrating those 5 people, I was like, well, it wasn't enough. It didn't pay my rent. I did a horrible job. So it's like I created it out of scarcity instead of creating it out of abundance mindset, instead of celebrating the fact that I had the opportunity to create another program, instead of celebrating the fact that I had the opportunity to be an entrepreneur in the first place, and that I was aligned with my purpose. So I find a lot of people like, especially in like the MLM businesses, you know, where you get like pulled in and there's all this abundance. But when I've ever done those things, because I've done them all, because that was who I was before, I was just like, oh, I got to do this because if I spend $5,000, I'm going to make $5 million. And it's so easy. And so it's this ease and the scarcity. I need that so bad that I'm willing to do anything instead of thinking about it. So it's like, so scarcity also is from the emotionally reactive state.
It's like just letting greed
Yeah.
take over.
Greed and really just like fear.
Yeah.
So
It's also a common thing I see, which I think is really disheartening, is that someone does their first launch, their first project, and they get even a few people, and it's not enough for them.
mm-hmm.
And that's always like really, I mean, I get it. You're disappointed because you wanted more, but then you tend to ignore the people that you have right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I look at it is, if you can't appreciate who you have now, how are you ever expected to get more?
Yeah.
And it's yes, there's always exceptions. There's always the person that was at the right place at the right time, who said the right thing to the right amount of people, and they were an overnight success. But most of us are not overnight successes.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to tell my people, I'm just the tortoise. I'm just going to keep putting one step in front of the other and keep moving.
Yeah.
And that's how we have to look at things like our progress. And I think it's so easy for people to just be completely disappointed because they are not experiencing overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an overnight success 11 years in the making.
Listen,
you know?
that was a long day.
Yeah, a very long day. Yeah, how do you measure days on like Jupiter? It's just one day.
Yeah, nailed it.
But I'm hearing too that do you see there's a lot of correlation to things like gratitude and abundance to self-love? Where do those connect?
Yeah, so it's about our mind, and our mind being a very complex but also very simple thing. And it's really important to know that celebrating everything, and I mean just like literally like giving yourself a pat on the back. Mm-hmm. Like if I really celebrated everything in the way that I would want to, I would have a lot of shoes because I love shoes. But that's just not realistic, right? So it's saying like, for instance, you know, I had the goal of launching my subscription. I wanted 20 people to join. 5 people joined, right? And it's me saying, oh, I have 5 people who took a chance on this brand new program.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's also a celebration of that I did it.
Yeah.
I actually did it.
I did it, and I was
terrified. Most people don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and it just, now I'm thinking, oh, wait, now I have those people that I wanted when I first launched. And am I celebrating that, or do I just want more?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I also just like need to remind everyone that like, I'm only human. James is only human. Like, I personally experience that like disappointment every day sometimes, but you always have to reframe your mind around it and know that like, yes, you're always going to want more. Everyone always wants more, but having heard these words, maybe it'll flip the switch for you to be like, oh, but let me take a step back. I know that I want more. It's not discrediting that you don't deserve more. It's saying get confident and comfortable in celebrating what you have right now. Mm-hmm. So
it's like this idea is kind of a metaphor that popped into my brain. It's like we're climbing a mountain. I believe we'll always want until the day we die. There'll always be desires.
Mm-hmm.
They'll change. You know, one day you'll want something else. You'll be searching for something else, experiencing new things and stuff like that, and that's great. So you're climbing this mountain that doesn't have a top, and until the day you die, then you reach the top and die.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever you are on the mountain, we tend to only be looking up
mm-hmm.
at where we need to go,
yeah.
and then we go, oh, I'm not there yet. But what I think most people are not doing, which is what I think you're asking people to do here, is like stop for a moment and just look back at how far
mm-hmm.
you've come.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, like the brain doesn't want to do that. It doesn't want to acknowledge change, progress, and growth. It's like all that stuff is very no, threatening, bad.
Yeah.
So let's just discredit it. You know what? No, like let's not look at the fact that you launched this thing that used to scare the crap out of you, that you actually overcame a fear. Let's not look at that. Let's look at the fact that you didn't get 15 other people that you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's easy. Anyone who focuses on that is going to be upset or bummed out or have a bad day, bad week, bad month, right? It takes like real discipline for us to find the good in everything
mm-hmm.
that we do. So yeah, this is awesome. So what can we do in these moments, or like what do you do, and what other like either practices or tips you have for like living this instead of just saying, no, I got it, Paul, I need to love myself and celebrate more and be a little grateful.
Yeah. Well, I just simply need to think of me.
Okay.
And
Easy.
and what I mean that is
you'll feel everyone's
Yeah.
love for you.
Amen. What I mean by that is you need to think of my first name, because I have created the Paul strategy. It is an acronym, and it's a 4-step process to really help you move through almost anything. And I'm saying, like, literally almost anything, whether you're in a fight with your significant other, whether you had have fear coming up about launching a course, any span of the spectrum that you're experiencing something that makes you feel uneasy, apply this acronym. I've had people say my New Year's resolution is Paul, and just do it. Okay. So the first letter is P, and that's presence. So just like we've been talking about, you need to get present with where you are right now. What are you actually feeling in your body? Get present with yourself. Like, where is the emotion coming up? Why are you experiencing the things that you're experiencing? And then A, accountability. So we need to have some accountability. We need to get accountable for our emotions, because at the end of the day, we can only control how we're feeling. We can only reframe what can I do differently about the situation right now. I could point my finger out at so many different people and say, well, they did this, they did that. Well, yeah, they did, but I can't control them. But what can I control about myself? So get accountable with yourself. Then unconditional acceptance, because listen, you are where you are for a reason, and you got to accept it. You can't continue fighting the fact that you are exactly where you need to be, because being here and being present, instead of 10 years in the future when you have all of the riches and the family of your dreams and all the accomplishments, and you finally love yourself because it'll happen later, that's not going to serve you. Right here now, what's going on? Unconditionally accept that you need to learn a lesson from this.
100%.
And then finally, L, love. Just throw some love at it. Love yourself, love the people around you, love that you signed up 5 people and not the 20 that you wanted. And then once you've worked through that acronym, that strategy, more often than not, you've either learned the lesson you need to learn, which, by the way, normally I feel like you have to learn the lesson at least 20 times before it sticks. Right. So this isn't going to be a quick
it's not
fix.
about learning the lesson. It's like, are you now applying the lesson?
Yes. Yeah. And you'll be on your way to just creating I think that blame is a massive thing. And it's just creating this concept of what can I do differently?
We're either blaming others or blaming ourselves. And you realize that the blame game is a choice. You can opt out of the blame game completely. It doesn't do anything for anybody.
Yeah.
But I think even just the biggest piece of all of this is just this idea that I think if people actually operated from this, it could change everything, whether this is about love or not, is accepting that you are exactly where you need to be for a reason. There's a reason why things aren't working for you right now, or versus that's your experience of it. There's a reason why you didn't get those other 15 people.
Yeah.
There is a reason for it, and it's up to you to discover what that is. And you can't, when you're resisting it, denying it, blaming yourself for it, blaming others for it, and you're going to keep experiencing that same scenario over. Maybe we take our shit with us wherever we go, right?
Amen.
So can you, to really ground this for us, take us through a specific example, whether it's yours or confidentially a client that you've had the opportunity to work with? From
start to finish.
Yeah.
So I had a client come to me who was just the definition of a gym bunny. She loved going to the gym. She defined herself by the gym, and she had all of her friends at the gym, everyone just at the gym, right? And she came to me after breaking her foot. So she couldn't go to the gym anymore. She gained 30 pounds. And she was like, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't have the gym. And her business was suffering because her clients were noticing that she was really sad. And they didn't want to be around her. So people started going other directions. Her relationship she was in was suffering because she was just not showing up, because she was so hyper-focused on this one aspect of her life that wasn't going the way it used to be going. And there's this thing that I like to call superhero syndrome, where we think that we were a superhero in the past. So it's looking like, oh, remember when I would go to the gym every day and I had a 6-pack abs and I was awesome, I was a superhero. Like, we always compare ourselves to the past self, and that's a lot of stuff that I run into with every single person who comes to my program. Well, I just want to be who I was 5 years ago. Okay, great. Do you like you know that we only remember the good stuff, right? They're
Right.
like, oh yeah, okay. So here my client is, and she's recovering from this foot injury. And we start working through all of this stuff, and we find out that she doesn't feel heard. So she would show up as this super fit person, and she would be seen. And by being seen, it compensated for the fact that she felt like she wasn't heard. And in previous relationships, this kind of experience of not feeling heard meant that she kept on repeating herself, and she would speak really loud, like she would yell to get her points across, because her mother never heard her, right? So, this is where the line kind of blurs between what I do and what we do in therapy, right? And the real difference between me as a coach and a therapist is that I can get a little deeper into it with you, and it's not just a once a week or one, this is a full-time thing that you and I have committed to. So then she steps into it, and she realizes that she has been heard. She's heard every time, but she wasn't hearing herself.
Wow.
So long story short, she graduates the program, and she says these words to me. She said, Paul, I never knew that I was doing this stuff to myself.
And you said what?
You did it?
I can't hear you.
Huh? Excuse me? Speak up. Louder for the people in the back. And it turned into this whole thing where she ended up leaving the relationship that she was in, and she had this really calm breakup moment. And she was just like, you know what? I'm not feeling heard, and it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me, and I need to focus on hearing myself right now. And he was like, that makes sense. And it was coming from the kind of beautiful, peaceful place of understanding, because they just she knew how to communicate what she truly needed. Yeah. And then on the flip side with her business, her clients started saying, hey girl, what's going on? It feels different now. What are you doing differently? And she was like, oh, I'm just loving myself now. And they were like, oh, how do you do that? And she was like, well, give Paul a call. So, it's just this full circle. And I love telling her story, because there's pieces of relationship and there's pieces of transformation. And she also learned how to love her body as it was right then and there.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And then again, we can say this whole idea of you're exactly where you need to be is, she wouldn't have had this type of breakthrough in her life, which she needed, if she wasn't going through something like a broken foot, which some people would say is very metaphorical, that if you have a foot injury, you're struggling with taking steps forward in your life. Very interesting. You also said before, when we were chatting pre-show, this whole idea of letting emotion be your guide. Yeah. And it sounds like that's what kind of really comes up in the P for Paul of presence. Can you speak more to that? Because I am coming from my personality type. Are you into Myers-Briggs or Enneagram and all that jazz?
I'm into human design.
Okay. Okay. Gosh darn it. That's okay. So I have a rule in my life that when I hear something 3 times, it's okay. So that was the 3rd time in 1 week that I heard human design, and from 3 completely different people in 1 week. So you'll hear more about that coming up. That's really interesting. I've had 3 people talk about it in 7 days or less. So I saw the 2nd time, and I'm like, oh, I know someone else is going to bring this up. So you just did. Okay. So my Myers-Briggs personality type, very left brain, very logical, very black and white, logical. Everything had to make sense. Scientist, black and white. And I've moved completely into another direction of instead of just making strategic sense of a business decision, I've let emotion be so much more my guide. And that's obviously when I started seeing success and things that worked in my life. So I would love it if you can speak to this, and not just the idea of emotion is your guide, but how do we learn the language for our emotions so that it can guide us? And is that what this first letter is about? Is presence to the
yes,
emotion.
presence to the
guy.
emotion, to the body, to the lesson you're supposed to learn, anything that's going on. So when it comes to emotion, it's first of all, like, we've been told to just screw our emotions, like they don't matter, right?
Right.
So that's how we've been taught, and I think that we're at this like breaking point in society where like we're learning how to like cry again, and we're learning how to feel things, and feelings, what are they? Like, they're crazy. Like, oh, I have people apologize every single day for crying, and I'm just like, I have to preface every call with, just so you know, like 99% of the time I'm going to be crying because I'm feeling so deeply the emotion of your breakthrough that there's no shame or expectation or judgment coming from my side.
Yeah.
So,
And then they say sorry for saying sorry.
Yeah, they say sorry. And we can talk about sorry in a second. When it comes to this whole concept of feelings and emotions and letting them be your guide, more often than not, the things that we truly want are going to be the things that bring up fear and resistance and suffering. Not because we don't want them, but because we're so scared of not having them.
Whoa. Okay. Can you give a specific example of that? Because I think that's really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So we want something, we think about it, and then all this fear, anxiety, or worry comes up. And the fear is there because we're afraid of not having it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we're afraid that if we go after this thing and it doesn't work, that then we'll tell ourselves, like, I won't ever be able to have this.
Yeah.
And so that's why that fear is there.
Yeah. Well, we can bring it back to my client with the voice coaching. He baseline didn't think he deserved it. He was so scared of not having to focus on just one thing. So he's dancing between this world of being a teacher and being a performer. Like, you know, he wanted to be a musician full time, but he knew that to support himself, he had to be a teacher. So he wants to be a musician. He's putting all of this weight in being a teacher. And the second that he started giving himself permission to A, charge more, B, welcome the abundance that he knew he deserved, he started receiving more gigs, and to the point where he had the freedom to start saying no to stuff. So if he hadn't have hit rock bottom and on the phone with me being like, Paul, I don't know how to make this work, but I know I need to make this work, then he would never have opened up and unlocked the fact that he wanted something so badly, but he was denying himself because it didn't make sense rationally for him.
Well, also, if he had that fear that he didn't deserve it, I think that would be really scary to go after something and then find evidence that maybe he's right, that you don't deserve it, you know?
Yeah, and I personally have dealt with these types of things. I still deal with them. And it's, so if I'm taking you through a scenario, right? Like, let's say you're a budding entrepreneur and you really want to launch a coaching program and you want to charge high ticket for it. And you're just like, I know that I can help so many people, right? We could pull this from my story. Like, I know I could help so many people. I don't know how to do this, but I know deep down inside my programming is going to support so many people. I hit so many walls because I'm like, oh no, this is easy. I have the consistent paycheck of teaching spin, but my body is starting to give out on me, and I'm going through adrenal fatigue, and all of these lessons and emotions and feelings are hitting my body that the universe is saying, yo, you got to pay attention. Something's got to give. Where I'm sitting across from my husband and I'm just like crying. I'm like, I can't do this any longer. And my husband's a Taurus. He's very rational. He's very just like, likes the consistency. He's like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know, but something different. And I was just like, I need 8 months. I need 8 months to figure this out. And this was just like me sitting and just noticing what's happening in my body. And we're very detached from our bodies these days. And our body, the other thing that I do is I help people unlock themselves, because listen, James, you know exactly what you want to do. Anyone who's listening, you know exactly what you want. Yeah. And it's just, we're keeping ourselves from it because we're worried we might not get it.
Yeah.
But the real question is it worth it? To like, what if you just don't even try? Like, is it better to just not try, or to actually like try and fail?
Because if we're afraid we're not going to get it, the only guarantee, which I'd bank all my money on, and I know I'd win, the only guaranteed way to not do it, to not get that thing you're afraid of not getting, is to not do anything.
Yeah.
That's the only guaranteed strategy we know won't work.
You're a very rich man.
I would win that bet every time. Every time. Like, you immediately increase your odds by just doing something, anything. Anything. So fear is the guidance system in terms of, like, you're saying, like, go towards the fear. Because something came before that fear.
Right.
Like, there was a desire before the fear.
And really, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah.
And to reframe that, what's the best thing that could happen? So I like to guide my clients through that. There's 3 things that we always use. The gratitude practice, which if you're an entrepreneur, you know that every successful entrepreneur has a gratitude practice. Why are you resistant to it? It's unclear, but everyone is. Everyone's resistant to it. What, I have to write down 3 things I'm grateful for every day? Yes, because it's going to retrain your brain to stop focusing on the fear and the negativity. And then it's the present tense journaling. It's writing down what you want right here and now as if you already have it. And then finally, when you run into the fear, what's the worst thing that could happen? And then once you cycle through that, but what's the best thing that could happen?
Yeah. It's always worth it in the end.
Because you're going to learn so many lessons. Like, I've launched so many businesses before this, like even my personal training business, which it did okay, but like I had like 3 clients, and they made me want to pull my hair out. So it's like, was it worth it? I don't know. Like, but I learned how to do the things that got me to where I was and had that breakthrough moment.
And that goes back. You're exactly where you need to be. I mean, I look back at all the quote unquote failed businesses. Every single one of those, they were preparing me for something. I was learning something I needed to learn, a skill, a new outlet, a new perspective. It was all preparing me. And what if, folks listening here right now in this moment, what you're going through is simply preparing you for exactly what you need so you can get all that you want. Let's talk about this sorry nonsense.
Oh, sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
So the word sorry, well, I like to think of all things as human beings that we do. They're energetically resonating on some certain level. So the word sorry comes from the word sorrow, and it's a very low vibe word. I'm sorry. The word, we would always say, like, I'm sorry for your loss. Like, that's where it resonates. When people passed away, so much sorrow, like sorrow is deep-seated sadness. So here we are nowadays saying sorry and low vibing all over the place. Sorry for taking up space. Sorry for, taking too long in the bathroom. Sorry for being late. Instead, I want to just urge you to consider how you can reframe that to positive. So, for instance, like if you are running late, like, thank you for your patience. Thank you for waiting for me. And that's a really, really simple one that almost every single person can put into action today. Thank you for your patience. Or sometimes it's hard. Like, there are times where I'm just like, oh, I really want to say sorry, but how can I reframe this? And it's like, sometimes it's unclear. So then I just don't say anything.
Don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
You realize it's not necessary.
It's not necessary to, or I even will prefer to use the word I apologize. Because
yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Because my take on this as well, because what we kind of told you was I sent Paul the wrong address to our thing, and I'm all about, like, I want to take responsibility, and I don't I'm like, he's like, I want to value your time. I value because when you come from a place like, I value my time, I want to let people know, like you, like, I value your time too. And even if it was like a 5-minute inconvenience, I want to own that and accept the accountability for that. But I don't want it to be like low vibe and, like fear based.
Yeah.
So, like, hey, what I did, I acknowledge, or I apologize for the inconvenience that might have caused you. And I really appreciate you, not getting all pissed off at me, Paul.
Oh, well, I'm going to get very vulnerable right now. So I got up to Laguna at like 10:30, and I parked, and I heard a voice, and I was like, that sounds like James. And I looked, and you were standing on the corner, and you were on the phone. And I was like, oh, I could totally walk up and be like, hey, James, how's it going? But then I was just like, oh, no, I don't want him to know that I'm here this early. He's going to think he's like really important or something. And like, I had to show up 30 minutes early for this, So I had all this stuff. So then when they were like, oh, he moved, I was like, wow, so then I'm here thinking, what could I have done differently? I could have stepped through my fear and like walked up to you and be like, hey bro, how's it going? Even though you're on the phone, and I wouldn't have ever done that, but I probably would have, but I experienced all this fear and I was like, I don't want him to know. And like, oh, I parked at a meter and he's probably going to be like, oh, you can move your car into the lot. It's fine.
Right.
Like all these things and all these stories I'm telling myself, where that's why I kind of like, so then when they told me that you had moved, I was like, oh, well, I saw him over there, so I'm going to start walking that way. And I was like, maybe he'll be looking out for me. But so it's just like, that's me standing in a way. So I'm like, oh, well, in the future, the universe put you there so that I could connect. But my fear stood in the way of doing that.
Wow. And here's the other thing too, is that why I love an example like this, not just because it's so specific and so recent, but because it's quote unquote small in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's easy for us to get on a podcast and talk about our fear of launching that program or, starting that business. But what about these micro fears? What about these little moments that are happening throughout your day where you see that person and you go right instead of left because you don't want them to see you or whatever? And for you to have done all this work, now it's just, you see it everywhere. It's like Neo in the Matrix. You just see fear. There's an opportunity for a choice. Do I go from fear or do I go from love? And you start to realize that for all of us, because we're all human, it's so prevalent. It's everywhere. It's like in every single moment throughout our entire day that we're doing that. I'll even see, I was like, this person's like, great stupid example, right? Where like you're in line somewhere and the person ahead of you isn't paying attention and they're up, but they're not moving forward. And you're like, oh, I don't want to be that guy to like tell him like, come on, go get, it's like, I'll just wait until he figures it out. And we're all standing there. And then the person behind you is like, why aren't you telling them to, all these little things. And you want to start to notice and realize like, where are these small micro fears driving your life? Because if it's all these small little things, those add up. And if you're doing it here, you're doing it there, you're doing it everywhere, right?
Yeah, that happens a lot in business. And a lot of my clients who come in who are looking to grow in business, it's this, I'm inconveniencing people. I'm, asking for the sale, or I'm inconveniencing people by speaking my truth. Like, I have a client who's a manager or owns a company, and it's grown, and she's terrified to speak her truth, and she keeps on resenting herself and getting angry.
That's just making it worse.
Right.
Too.
And then it's popping up in different places in her life, where it's just like falling into her family life because she doesn't feel heard, or so it just like explodes somewhere else. And I might get really extreme here, but like I feel that a lot of like disease and sickness comes from not speaking your truth and not saying what you want and not owning up to your fears. Like things manifest in our bodies, like fear will just sit there. Yeah. So it's a very, very slippery slope when it comes to ignoring your fear. And hopefully right here now, this conversation that James and I are having is just helping you understand that A, you're not alone, and B, like now's the time. Yeah. Like, what have you got to lose?
Well, I think this inconvenience concept is a really prevalent one. Like, how much are we not doing something, holding back or hesitating because of a fear that we're going to inconvenience someone? But let's even look at that concept or idea of inconvenience. You would actually, to operate from that belief, you'd have to be a mind reader. Because how do you know, and you'd have to be like a fortune teller, how do you know that this thing you're going to do would inconvenience somebody? How do we know for a fact that it is? How do we know that it's not exactly what they need to hear? Like, we talk about things like law of attraction and like manifesting things in your life, and that gets really exciting, but that's like 1.0. Where things can get really magical, because the people that listen to this podcast, especially, they're up to things where they want to be the change maker. Have you ever considered the idea of being on the opposite end of someone else's manifestation? That you could be one thing away from like the manifestation that someone is out there asking for, looking for. Now you're not an inconvenience. You're a dream come true for them. You're their prayer answered. But because you operated from your fear, a fear that is, you have no evidence, it's not grounded in any type of evidence whatsoever, I might inconvenience this person, you've denied them of that opportunity. Let them also give them the opportunity to communicate that. That's something that's really helped me over the years, is saying, you know what, I'm an adult. for the most case, I hang out with adults. Sometimes, like I play with my little nephew. That's a little different story. But he's more honest and open and communicative than 99% of the adults I talk to. So let someone be an adult. Give people the opportunity to be an adult. And if you're inconveniencing them, let them tell you. Let them be man or woman enough to say, hey, you know what? This is really an inconvenience for me right now. Cool. I'm glad you told me. But, don't make assumptions or decisions on someone else's behalf when they haven't communicated that.
Yeah. And taking it a step further, why do you, by you not saying what you need and not asking for what you want, you're inconveniencing yourself.
Right.
So why do you deserve to be inconvenienced when and sacrificed for this person that maybe you don't even know? So there's a lot underneath that, like the stories we tell ourselves about our worth and, oh, well, I'm not worth asking for this. Like my word for 2019 is ask. And it's very scary but it's like, I mean, you followed me on Instagram and then I sent you a video message and I was like, hey, I'd love to be on your show. And what's the worst that could happen? You say, I was thinking about that. I was like, how would if you said no to me? But you really just can't say no to me. So
then what are you afraid of?
Right, exactly.
No one can say no to you. But then I think where that brings the self-love conversation back in, like full circle, is if self-love and like self-worth and deserving issues are all linked together, then asking would be like, oh, it's not worth his time, or I'm not going to be good enough to value or benefit this other person's life. And when you are asking from that place of having unconditional self-love and worthiness is not a question anymore, you already know that I'm bringing value to this person's life just by doing this. And I operate that because I've dealt with all this stuff myself. But I go, boy, you know what? Like if I'm going to ask to be on someone else's podcast, or I'm going to ask to speak in an event, or I'm going to make an ask, I know that I'm going to lead first with whatever I'm giving is going to even provide more value to them than the request I'm asking for. Yeah. And there's no question of that. There's no doubt. Even if it's like we're going to talk for 5 minutes and I give them a strategy that blows their mind, or I'm just going to be in their presence enough that I inspire them, encourage them, or give them feedback, or just ask somebody, hey, anything I can help you with? And then you realize, like, cool, I helped you. I provided value to you. I'm not worried at all that about this relationship, going both ways.
Yeah.
So
mine falls into just being in my presence.
Yeah.
So that's
totally. Yeah. We should all just be lucky to be in the same room as you. Yeah. Own it right there.
Yeah.
So then the question, maybe this is another episode, where does that fall into cockiness?
Yeah.
Yeah. Another episode. But this has been amazing. What a great conversation. And I know you have some special gifts for our listeners. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So if I have as I spoke about it before, the free self-love mantra that you can say to yourself in the mirror to just get you started on the journey to start noticing, just head to my website, Paul Fishman. So that's my first name, Paul, last name Fish, like the things that swim in the sea, manlikeme.love, paulfishman.love. And you can sign up for my email newsletter. You'll get notified whenever I have a new episode of my show, The Road to Self-Love, which we didn't talk about today, but basically I have my guests join me in the car and we are literally and figuratively on the road to self-love. We have a candid conversation about life, business, and we play some road trip games, and it's a lot of fun. And you can listen to that on iTunes or YouTube and watch it on YouTube. And you can also, if you want to get that mantra, you can go to my Instagram at Paul Fishman, where I do my best to show up every single day with some sort of teaching moment. And I just think that it's a great self-love community that we have going on.
I love it. And we'll link all that up in the show notes for you guys, so it's nice and easy and convenient for you guys to go check out and follow Paul beyond this episode. Now, before we wrap it up, do you have any final thoughts, ideas, perspectives to share with our listeners that you really feel would put a cap on this episode and call it complete?
If you are listening to this episode, the universe wants you to receive this message, and it's no longer serving you to be resistant to the things that James and I spoke about today. So just notice that, take that statement that I just made in, if you want to re-listen to this episode and find out where that piece is that you are supposed to hear. But everything happens for a reason. Life is happening for you, not to you. And I'm just a strong believer, if you need more support within this whole loving yourself first, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Apply for my program. I would love to support you in any way that I can.
If someone is having resistance to this, which is a form of fear, doesn't that just prove your whole point that do the things that scare you anyway? So if you are resisting it, you probably need this the most.
Amen.
Yeah. All right, Paul Fishman, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, Paul, again so much for coming in, sharing all your wisdom, and really helping all of our listeners. Really appreciate it. And thank you guys so much for tuning in and making it to the end of the episode. In such a busy, chaotic life, you guys have so much stuff going on. You're amazing. So thank you. And we'll have more amazing episodes like this one coming your way here on the Mind Your Business podcast. Take care.